Hey everyone, is anyone in the chat yet? Just bear with me a moment. I'm just setting a few things up. Can everyone hear me okay? Is the audio sounding okay? Oh, I can see a few people are here now. Okay, good. The audio is okay. That's good. How is everyone doing? Are you all doing okay? Oh, I can see loads of people coming in now. This is great. Yeah, I'm doing really well. It's the temperature here in the UK has gone very warm the last week or so. So it's quite clammy in this room at the moment. So hoping I don't get too sweaty. Not to put you off or anything. Our Blu-ray collector, new to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, quite a lot of people have joined in the last couple of weeks. Oh, is there a slight crackle to the audio? I'm just gonna have a listen. Yeah, I think that's probably just background noise that I'm not gonna be able to fix, unfortunately. But thanks for letting me know. How am I finding lockdown? Honestly, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. To be honest, a lot of my spare time I would usually spend indoors watching films anyway. So in that regard, not a great deal has changed. But obviously going out to the shops and, getting food and things like that is a bit of a hassle these days. And I'm working from home as well. So I work from this desk here. So a lot of my time is spent sat right here, typing away and things like that. But yeah, how's everyone else finding lockdown? Is it going, as well as it can do? My house is yet to be the Overlook Hotel. Yeah, from The Shining. I mean, I'm sure for a lot of people it's going that way. Getting cabin fever, staying indoors, is probably driving people a bit crazy. But yeah, how's everyone doing? I hope you're all managing lockdown. Yeah, Alfie, I'm missing the cinema as well. I used to go to the cinema quite a lot because I had one of those. Cineworld has like an unlimited card. So one of the big cinema chains here in the UK, you can pay about £17 or £18 a month, but you get to go as many times. So as long as you go twice to the cinema in a month, it more than covers the cost. So if you end up going once a week, it's a lot more affordable than paying each time. So yeah, I've been missing that for sure. Obviously, there's no new films coming out really. I know some films are coming out on streaming platforms. Yeah. Oh, Craig, that's a good idea actually. Doing a sync film club. I mean, that's maybe something that I could kind of give a go on here. Because I have seen some people do that where, a load of people watch the same film at once and they all say, right, start the film right now. And it's kind of like a watch along party. So you can kind of discuss what's going on basically. That's a good idea. Yeah, Craig, I will definitely give you some recommendations if you just let me know what kind of thing you want to watch. Like a lot of people, I've been trying not to watch things that are a bit too heavy, nothing too serious. I've been trying to keep it light. So yeah. Jurassic Theory says, my Star Wars collection just arrived. Very happy. Oh, that's really good. I've still not gone through the Star Wars films in that collection yet. Yeah, I'm in a bit of a difficult position with that actually because I've said that I'm kind of splitting that set with my dad and my brother. So in my head, I want to wait till we can all watch it together. But obviously, with lockdown, we can't really do that. So yeah, I'm a bit apprehensive about digging into it. I might, even though I've done that unboxing video, I might save it for a while. Josh asks, "Do I have a bad cinema experience?" Probably the worst experience that I've had in the cinema is when I once fainted in the cinema. I've told this to some of my friends before, but yeah, I went to see. Do you know the film Green Room? There's a film called Green Room directed by Jeremy Saulnier, and it's a very violent and like suspenseful film. And sometimes, like when I'm watching films that are like very gory or very like very tense, I don't know. I just for whatever reason I fainted during that film in the cinema. So that's probably my worst experience going to the cinema is actually fainting, which is yeah, kind of crazy. I wouldn't advise it. I would not advise fainting in the cinema because it ruins. First of all, it ruins it for everyone else. But yeah, that's a little interesting story for you guys. Daniel says, finally been able to get through my backlog of films, especially some Alfred Hitchcocks. That is great. I mean, I'm a big fan of Hitchcock. Oh God, if I had to pick a favorite Hitchcock film, I do love Vertigo. I love Rebecca. Yeah, I also love Frenzy. Frenzy was one of Hitchcock's later films from the 70s, but I do really love that one. It's very violent as well. Very violent. Oh, I can see Vanessa's here. Hello, Vanessa. Yeah, it's been great chatting to you, Vanessa, about films over the last week or so. Let's see who else is in the chat. Yeah, Alfie asks, "Do I listen to Mark Commode?" Yeah, I went through a period of listening to them every week, Mark Commode and Simon Mayo. But lately, I've not been listening, not out of choice. Yeah, just I don't know why, to be honest. Let's see who else is in the chat. Oh, Mike says it was cool seeing me on Dice K's Howard's End live stream. Yeah, that was really informative. Howard's End is a great film, one of my favorite films. So it's good hearing everyone's thoughts about that. Twisted Razor says the Star Wars set is amazing. I really wish I could get it, but I pre-ordered the Bruce Lee Criterion set. Yes, I need to pre-order that, to be honest, because that is one that I definitely want to get. Because I mentioned, I can't remember who I was speaking to, but with Bruce Lee's films, I've only seen Enter the Dragon. So yeah, I need to delve more into his works. I know was it 5 films that Bruce Lee made? So yeah, I've not seen the rest. Patrick says, just unboxed my Kwai-Dan set from Eureka. Such a great addition. Yeah, that is on the way to me, I believe. I did pre-order the Kwai-Dan set, and I've got the Kwai-Dan. I've got the Criterion Collection Kwai-Dan release somewhere in the back there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that one for sure. David says, my shelving is awesome. Most bookshelves aren't great for Blu-rays. Any advice? Yeah, these particular shelves, a lot of people ask me about these shelves, and I really should address it in a video. Because yeah, basically I got these on Amazon. So this specific type of shelves, they're from Amazon. And I think they're like they're manufactured in China, so it comes in a flat pack, very much like IKEA. But they're the only type of shelves that I've seen where the depth of each shelf is perfect for a Blu-ray case. So it's perfectly deep for like a CD or a Blu-ray case. So when you see my films there on the shelves, they're not like brought forward; they're pushed right back to the shelf. So it's really handy for just for organizing things. But yeah, I do plan to make a video on that soon. And I know if you've seen any of my recent videos, I do tend to include the link in the description of those videos for these shelves if you want to buy them. Sammy asks, "What's the best movie I've seen during lockdown?" Um, hmm, that is a tough one. I recently did a video about all the Criterions that I watched in lockdown, and a lot of those were first watches. One of them was one of them that was a first watch was David Lynch's Blue Velvet, which I hadn't seen for some reason, just hadn't seen it, but I really loved that one. That was a great first watch. Oh, Nathan's here. Hi, Nathan. How you doing? Me and Nathan have actually been working on a video together. Nathan Jones, he has his own channel where he talks about Blu-ray collecting and Criterions and stuff. So yeah, we've been collaborating, and we've got a good idea that we've. Well, he's filmed his part. I still need to film mine. But yeah, that's going to be good. But he asks, what would you say about getting into Indicator? What should I start with? I'd probably go with, so if you can find any connection to a filmmaker or an actor that you like that is present in the Indicator collection, then I would dive in that way first rather than going in the deep end, going totally blind for something that you've never heard of. So say, for example, if you like some of the films from Brian De Palma, you could get Body Double. I don't know why my mind went blank there. You could get Body Double if you like Brian De Palma. You could get Christine if you like John Carpenter films. I know, Nathan, that you're a fan of, or you're going through a lot of the Hammer films and the Dracula films. So there are some really good Hammer box sets from Indicator. So yeah, that's where I'd recommend starting with Indicator. But yeah, a great label. I'm probably going to do more videos on them pretty soon. Let's see who else is in the chat. Isaac asks, if you could only keep 3 of your Criterion Blu-rays, which 3 would you keep? I mean, I don't want to do that. I don't want to just keep 3 of them. I want to keep them all, please. Can I keep them all? First one I would definitely keep is Barry Lyndon. So Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon, which I've said many times is my favorite film of all time. And in particular, the Criterion Blu-ray of Barry Lyndon is the best looking version of that film you can get on Blu-ray. So I definitely have to keep that. I'd probably also keep I'd keep The Red Shoes, because The Red Shoes is one of my favorite films of all time. And in terms of rewatchability, I'd keep Tarkovsky's Stalker, because I've seen Stalker a few times, and I don't think I fully understand, or I don't think I've fully gotten everything that I can from that film. So for me, Stalker is a film that I could watch, many times and still see it, fresh, still see it as if I'm seeing it for the first time. So yeah, hopefully that's answers that question. They're just 3 films that I love in the old Criterion collection. Right, I'm going to go down the chat a bit. What I'll say before I go down the chat just a bit more, though, is so this live stream, it's kind of a bit of a mini celebration for getting to 2,000 subscribers. So obviously I want to say thank you to everyone here. Thank you to everyone who has just subscribed or watched my videos, left loads of great comments. In particular, that's what I love about doing this channel, is the people that leave the comments, which is mostly you guys here. It's just so great to meet people and be able to chat about these films, because obviously at the moment during lockdown, I'm not speaking to anyone except my girlfriend, because we're the only 2 people that live here and we can't, interact with anyone. But even normally, when things are normal in life, a lot of my friends, my close friends, I don't necessarily get to speak to about world cinema and the Criterion collection and things. So this is a great way to meet people, and I'm so thankful that I've met, over 2,000 of you now. Most of you know that I only started doing YouTube again in February this year, so it's been about 2 months. And when I came back in February, I had about 1,000 subscribers. So to almost double it in 2 months, thanks to you guys, that's really, it means so much to me. And it is because of you guys as well. It's not because of anything I've done, because if you guys didn't watch the videos, then they wouldn't get proliferated out to people through YouTube's, their wizardry, their algorithm thing. So yeah, thank you everyone who's listening, for helping me get to this position and meet loads of great people. So I'm out of breath after saying all that. Let me get back into the chat. One thing I will say about this lockdown is you'll probably notice I'm desperate for a haircut. My hair is just getting out of control. And I'm not willing to try cutting it myself because I might make an absolute pig's ear out of it. So I'm sure a lot of people are relating now. What are you doing about your hair? Are you cutting it yourself, or are you just letting it go wild? I did also give the beard a trim as well. That's about the best I can do. So I apologize for the absolute bird's nest that's on my head at the moment. Right, jumping back into the chat. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Josh asked, have I ever watched Belle de Jour? Yes, Belle de Jour, one of the great Buñuel films. Absolutely love that film. How excited am I for Dune? I'm very excited for Dune. And I need to read the novel as well. The novel is one that I've wanted to read for a long time. Oops, I hit the mic there. The novel is one I've wanted to read for a long time. So I'm very excited to see Dune. Brandon asks, thoughts on Fassbinder? I'm a huge Fassbinder fan. I have all of the Fassbinder films that Arrow have released over here. Yeah, I love Fassbinder. I love Fassbinder for the melodrama, obviously taking a lot from the school of Douglas Sirk. I love the colours in his films. I love the characters. And I love just how he deals with social interactions in films. Yeah, I love Fassbinder. Josu Hernandez asks, what's something you'd like to add to my collection but is hard to get or out of print? One of the things that I'm missing, which I really do need to, what I do want to get, is Arrow Academy released this film noir classics box set a few years ago, which I stupidly passed on. I passed on that. And I know you can get the films separately, but because I have every other Arrow Academy box set, that is one that I do want to get. Is the mic sounding okay though? I know some people said it was distorting a bit. Let's see what's in the chat. Tom Hodgson mentioned that he watched Sisters earlier today. So Sisters, the Brian De Palma film. Yeah, it does lack a bit of punch compared to some of his later works, but Sisters was one of his earlier films from the early 70s, I think. Yeah, I really enjoyed Sisters. Not one of my favorite De Palma films, but yeah, it shows a lot of what he would go to perfect in his career later on. Are there any films that I didn't like before, but now I love? I'm trying to think of films that I actively disliked that I now like. One film that I really hated when I saw it for the first time was Interstellar by Christopher Nolan. I saw Interstellar when it came out in the cinema. And for whatever reason, I wrote it off as this horribly flashy 2001 knockoff that made zero sense at all. And I've since watched it about 4 or 5 times. And each time I like it more and more. I like it for its visual effects. I like it for the sound. There's some bits about Interstellar that I'm not terribly keen on. I think some of the whole some of the things about love and some of the stuff that Anne Hathaway's character comes out with about love transcending the universe and things like that doesn't really do much for me. But yeah, that's a film that I really didn't like and now I like. So I guess that kind of answers the question. Oh, I've just seen we've had a super chat from Movies with Jay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, he says, congrats on 2K. I deserve all the success. Thank you so much. I forgot that's even a thing now. Yeah, I can have these super chats where people donate a tiny bit of money to me. Thank you so much for that. That really means a lot to me. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Vanessa mentions about her sister trimming her hair for her. Yeah, it's a dangerous game. It is a dangerous game. Yeah, Sam mentions that he cut his hair himself and it's a big mistake. Yeah, it's dangerous. I mean, yeah. I'm just looking in the chat now. Sorry, I'm terrible at multitasking. I'm terrible at reading the chat and then like actually saying things. Let's have a look. Paul Cole asks, is there a film not on Blu-ray that I wish had a release? Because he says he wants an official release of Mr. Roberts by John Ford, starring James Cagney, Jack Lemmon, and Peter Fonda. I would love that film to come out on Blu-ray. I haven't seen it, but just from those people involved, I would love to see that. I mentioned this, I think I mentioned this to some people before, that the way that I watch films, I tend to watch films through Blu-ray and through home release. So I do get to see a lot of films in the cinema now, but in terms of older films, it's not like I've seen them in the past on DVD. Because I only got into films properly, I only got into cinema around 5 years ago. So it was about 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And I began collecting Blu-rays. So I didn't collect DVDs and I didn't watch films online. I knew nothing about films. I was only into big blockbuster films. I knew nothing about world cinema at all. I'd never even seen a film that was not in English. So it's kind of hard for me to answer that question because pretty much everything I've seen that I've not seen in the cinema over the last few years has been on Blu-ray. Now, there are many films that I haven't seen that people have told me to watch that I would love to see get a Blu-ray release, but that isn't because that's not because I've seen it and I desperately want it. It's just because I'm curious and I'm waiting for a Blu-ray release. But yeah, off the top of my head, a film like that would be a film called A Moment of Innocence by Mohsen Makhmalbaf. I've not seen that film. And I'm a huge fan of Iranian cinema at the moment. I've been going through a lot of Makhmalbaf and Kiarostami's films, and some Asghar Farhadi films as well. So I love Iranian cinema at the moment, but I've just not seen that. And I'm waiting for a Blu-ray release, hopefully, one day. Jurassic Theory asks, what's my favorite trilogy? Favorite trilogy. So if we were talking like big blockbuster trilogies, I'm going to go with the original Star Wars trilogy because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. If you know me, you know I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So I'd go with that if I'm talking big blockbuster. But if I'm talking some of the trilogies that aren't as big, I'd probably go for the Three Colors trilogy from Kieslowski. I love that. I love all of his films as well, but in particular, the Three Colors trilogy, and it's available from Criterion as well. That is a great trilogy. All of those films are masterpieces, and depending who you ask, they pick a different favorite. Some people love blue, some people have red. Not many people pick white as their favorite, the middle film, because the middle film's a bit lighter. There's a lot more comedy in Three Colors White. But you know, sometimes if you ask me on the right day, I might pick white as my favorite from the Three Colors trilogy. But yeah, that's probably so. Yeah, favorite trilogy, either Star Wars or the Three Colors trilogy. You couldn't get more different, could you? Premium Blu-rays asks, do I watch my films on a big ass TV or a projector, or can I watch on a smaller TV or laptop? So I do prefer to watch on a big ass TV. My main TV that I watch a lot of films on is a 65-inch LG, like 4K OLED TV. So that's what's downstairs in the living room. So I prefer to watch on that. I do have this spare TV. So this is my old TV that I had before I upgraded to that LG one, and this is a 48-inch. What is it? It's just a 48-inch Samsung. It's a 4K TV, but this is before they put HDR on 4K TV. So this TV is about 6 or 7 years old now. So it's, in terms of modern standards, this TV behind me is not great. But yeah, to answer the question, I do prefer watching on a big TV. I've never had a home projector. I've never really looked into it either, because I know for a projector you do need quite a lot of space. You either need a blank wall to project on, or you need like a screen to pull down or whatever. So I've not looked into that. Can I watch on a smaller TV or a laptop? Yeah, I can. I can for sure. I would just always choose to watch on a big screen. I'm just gonna have a look down. Yeah, sorry again if I don't get to your questions in the chat. It's just because I'm flicking back and forth, and I might miss some questions. So if I don't answer your question, just ask it again. You can just ask it again, and I'll probably see your question. But once again, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks everyone for celebrating with me. I've really been enjoying making the videos and diving into the comments with people. I've been enjoying doing these live streams as well. Obviously, last time I did the film quiz, and I may do another film quiz at some point. But yeah, I've been really enjoying this. It's great chatting to all you guys in the chat here as well. Daniel Werner mentions that he hears Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films are getting a 4K box set release. Yeah, that's another film trilogy that I do actually love, is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. In terms of big, epic, blockbuster cinema, the Lord of the Rings trilogy I do really like. Sammy asks, what's my least favorite Criterion? Oh, my least favorite Criterion, that's really hard to decide. See, I'll be honest, with Criterion, I blind buy a lot of these films, and like sometimes they don't hit me as well, but I never really dislike a film. So if I'm picking a film that hasn't like hit me initially, but I still enjoy, one of the films that I don't really like because it reminds me of school is Lord of the Flies. The is it William Gibson? Lord of the Flies. That's a film that I watch, and I've tried to rewatch as well, and it just hasn't hit me. But yeah, I'd probably go with that. Oh, I've just seen we've had some more super chats. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Vanessa said, congratulations on reaching 2,000 subscribers. I wish I had discovered your channel sooner, but I'm having so much fun catching up on your uploads now and chatting to you in the comments. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Yeah, it's been great meeting you and chatting with you in the comments. I'm just so glad that I've been able to provide, you know, some recommendations to you. And I know that you're a big fan of classic cinema. I know you mentioned The Thin Man the other day. Yeah, that's a film I need to watch soon. But yeah, thank you so much, Vanessa. Oh, and there's been a super chat from AM as well. Thank you so much. AM says, my classic noir knowledge is limited to things like Sweet Smell. Where should I start? I love neo-noir stuff like Chinese Bookie, Thief, etc. Cheers. First of all, thank you so much for the super chat. That is really so nice of you. In terms of classic noir, there are a few directors that you could start with. So I'd probably say, I mean, you could look at some of the films by Billy Wilder. So obviously Double Indemnity is one that a lot of people go to as a clear example of what the noir genre is. Some of the films with Humphrey Bogart in by like Howard Hawks and Nicholas Ray. So you've got films like The Big Sleep. The Big Sleep is one I would definitely recommend. I would recommend checking out In a Lonely Place. I would recommend Out of the Past, directed by Jacques Tourneur, starring Robert Mitchum. One that I watched recently for the first time is Detour. Detour has a release from the Criterion Collection, and it's under 70 minutes long. So if we're talking like an economic film, that is a great film because it uses its time so well. It was made on a shoestring budget, but it's a great noir film. And it's probably one of the hardest noir films because it is so there's no hope in that film. And that's what most great noir films are like, because it sets up this premise and these characters and you just know things are going to go terribly for them. So yeah, those are some recommendations for you. Hopefully that helps, but thank you so much for the super chat. All right, let's have a look. Yeah, Nathan mentions that he finally checked out Abbas Kiarostami with Close Up yesterday. Yeah, I mean, Kiarostami, one of the greatest filmmakers. He passed away a few years ago, but Kiarostami made some incredible films. He made a lot of films in his home country of Iran, but then he also made Certified Copy with Juliette Binoche, which is amazing. It's set in the Tuscany region of Italy, and that's a great film about identity and a film about acting and role playing and things like that. So yeah, that's a tremendous film. And he also made a film called Like Someone in Love, which was in Japanese, set in Japan, and that is a tremendous film as well. So everyone, if you're into world cinema and you want to watch something a bit different, any film by Abbas Kiarostami I would recommend. But Close Up is a great one to start with because it shows how he blends fiction and non-fiction, documentary with narrative. You know, it's a tremendous film. Just gonna have a quick drink. Oh, Sam Dunkley's given me a super chat as well. Thank you so much, Sam. Sam says, congrats on 2K subs. Great content, great guy. Keep it coming. Oh, thank you so much, Sam. Sam, it's been great chatting to you. You know, we chat a lot on Instagram as well about movies and about, yeah, just collecting movies and about YouTube and things like that. So, yeah, honestly, Sam, it's been great meeting you through all of this. And thank you so much for the super chat. By the way, if anyone ever wants to chat to me, like if you just want to ask me something, of course you can drop a comment in the YouTube channel, but you can also hit me up on Instagram. So my Instagram is at Elliot Cohen Films. Yeah, just follow me on there and you can either comment on a post or you can send me a direct message. And yeah, just feel free to ask me some questions on there because I'm always up for giving recommendations. So yeah, thank you very much again, Sam. Okay, I'm just reading the chat now. Josh asks, have I ever met any actors before? Gosh, I'm trying to think. No, I don't. I've not met any big actors before. No, I've met a lot of budding actors because I've done a lot of short films, so I've met a lot of student actors through doing them. But no, in terms of big actors that people would know, I can't think of any that I've met. Surely I would remember if I had. So no, big actors, I've not met any, unfortunately. Sam asks, did I pick up the new Kieslowski set from Arrow? No, I didn't. I didn't. I forgot to pre-order it, and I know it's still available, so I should really get that. But you say the Scar is very good. Yeah, I need to get that because, like I said, I love Three Colors. I love the Decalogue. I love Double Life of Veronique. So I love Kieslowski as a filmmaker. Andre's here. Andre said that he rewatched Suzuki's Tokyo Drifter. That is a great film. Tokyo Drifter as well. I watched that with Dad. Me and Dad watched Tokyo Drifter, and we were about to do a podcast on Tokyo Drifter. And then this whole lockdown thing happened, and we've not been able to do our My Dad versus World Cinema podcast. So when we get back to it, Tokyo Drifter is one that we're going to talk about. We also watched, what did we watch? We watched Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal. So we watched that before this whole thing happened. And we watched Stromboli from Rossellini. So that's one that we were going to talk about. What else did we watch? We watched a bunch of films that we were going to do podcasts on. And then this thing happened. And yeah, it just screwed it all up. So we are going to get back to the podcast soon. All right, I'm just reading through the comments. Oh, there's been a super chat from Daniel Wernham. Daniel, thank you so much. Thank you. He says, congrats on 2K. One of my favorite foreign films is The Hunt with Mads Mikkelsen. Yes, that is a great film. The Hunt, directed by Thomas Vinterberg, starring Mads Mikkelsen, is tremendous. That's probably one of my favorite modern world cinema films from like the last 10 years or so. I watched that with my mum, actually, and my mum doesn't really watch that many foreign language films, but she loved it, and it is riveting. And in a way, it's a very scary film because it shows how things can just get flipped on its head and just go badly very quickly. So if you've not seen it, The Hunt, starring Mads Mikkelsen, is a tremendous Danish film. So I'd thoroughly recommend that. But yeah, Daniel, thank you so much for that. All right, I'm just going through the chat again. Is the mic okay? Can everyone hear me okay? I'm just going to adjust it. Does it sound okay? Let me know if it doesn't sound okay anyway. I'll keep going for now. Oh, another super chat from As Told by Gonzo. As Told by Gonzo, thank you so much. Yeah, I recently came across your channel. Your channel's great as well, and it's been great talking about films with you. You say, hello, Elliot. Just came across your channel a few months ago. Loving all your film recommendations. Started a list. Congrats on all your success. Sincerely, fan. Thank you so much, As Told by Gonzo. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, people are saying the mic's okay. Yeah, it might crackle a bit. I don't think that's my microphone. I think that's this mic. So I've got this mic, and it goes through this little mixing desk that I've got here. And then that goes into my computer, which then goes into YouTube over the internet. So there's so many ways where that crackle could come from. I don't know where it's coming from, unfortunately. So if the sound crackles a bit, I do apologize. Let's see. Vincent Vega asks, what is the best British movie of all time? Oh, that's difficult. I mentioned The Red Shoes earlier. Any of the films from Michael Powell are incredible, and he's one of the best British filmmakers. In terms of other British filmmakers, I love Mike Leigh. So Mike Leigh's films, particularly I like Secrets and Lies and Naked, which I watched recently. But in terms of best British film of all time, um, sometimes in my head as well, I forget what is a British film and what is an American produced British film, if you get what I mean. So is Lawrence of Arabia a British film? Because I know it's directed by David Lean, obviously starring Peter O'Toole, but I can't remember if that is counted as a British film or not. Maybe Lawrence of Arabia then. Maybe I'd mention that as the best British film of all time. Yeah, let me know in the chat if I'm wrong about counting Lawrence of Arabia as a British film. Schindler's Pissed. Schindler's Pissed asks thoughts on YouTube film critics like YMS. That's what's he called? Something Sunday. Ralph the Movie Maker, Chris Stuckman, Jeremy Johns, Red Letter Media. Thoughts on those film critics? I think they're good at doing what they do. A lot of the films that they talk about aren't necessarily the films that I'm particularly looking to watch soon. So I don't spend a lot of time watching reviews of like big blockbuster films. But you mentioned Chris Stuckman. Chris Stuckman was actually one of the reasons why I started this YouTube channel. So if you go back on my YouTube channel and you watch some of my early YouTube videos from like 4 years ago, they're really cringe. Like I cringe a lot watching them. But in those early videos, I was doing film reviews of films that were out in the cinemas. So like my first video ever was a review of The Magnificent Seven, the recent remake. So yeah, I used to watch Chris Stuckman a lot, and I used to go, "Hey, I watch movies," and this is at the time when I was watching a lot of foreign films and a lot of world cinema. But I thought, "Oh, hey, I want to be big on YouTube. Let's be Chris Stuckman," and that didn't work. It didn't work out. It didn't work because a lot of those films I wasn't truly passionate about, so I couldn't really talk, in detail or at length about these films. But yeah, those kind of film critics, look, it's great what they do, and they have lots of fans as well. Lots of people enjoy those videos. So yeah. Todd Rosie asks, what's my favorite film-related media or art that I collect? For example, I collect David Lynch art books and truly love listening to soundtracks from Malick films. In terms of non-Blu-rays, there's not really much that I collect that's not Blu-rays, if that makes sense. I do have quite a lot of soundtracks on vinyl, so a lot of movie soundtracks. Of course, I've got Barry Lyndon. I've got Vertigo, which I got recently. So I've got quite a few soundtracks on vinyl. And it's great because those soundtracks, they double as artwork. Because downstairs in our living room, we've got some they're like little shelves that are on the wall, and you can just balance a record sleeve on them, and you can just display the record. I also have a lot of film books, so I read a lot of books about film. I read a lot about filmmaking. Excuse me. I read a lot about filmmaking and screenwriting. I love screenwriting and just the craft of screenwriting. And yeah, so I read a lot about that. So I guess that would be the closest thing to that. Sorry, I'm still catching up on this. Still catching up on the chat. Any recommendations for UK Criterions? Yes. So my Criterion collection in the back here, I'd say probably about half of it is the UK releases. Because obviously when they come out in the UK, they end up being cheaper than importing them from the US. But in terms of recommendations, I mean, it depends. It depends what you're into. So I mentioned Tarkovsky's Stalker before. That is one of the that's probably one of the greatest films that you can get on the UK Criterion label. But of course, if you're not a fan of Tarkovsky, if you're not a fan of how should I put it? What people might call slow cinema. If you're not a fan of like introspective films that kind of ponder the meaning of life kind of thing, Stalker wouldn't be for you. But in terms of other films that I would recommend, let's see. What would I recommend? Oh, we talked about noir films earlier. Mildred Pierce is a great one from Michael Curtiz, starring Joan Crawford. That is a great film. Also, like just in terms of pure like fun films, in the UK you can get The In-Laws, the Arthur Hiller film. That's great. You can get Tootsie. So Tootsie, the Sidney Pollack film with Dustin Hoffman. That's really funny as well. Other recommendations for UK Criterion. Gosh. Where would I go? Dazed and Confused. Dazed and Confused, one of my all-time favorite films. It's a great hangout movie. Like it's great just for chilling out. Yeah, so Dazed and Confused. Just going down the chat. Yeah, keep the questions coming in, by the way. Keep the questions coming in. Cinephiliac asks, have I seen Mike Leigh's Meantime? I've not. Meantime is one that I've not seen from Mike Leigh. I will get the Criterion edition of Meantime at some point. But no, I've not seen Meantime. So I do definitely want to see that. Vanessa mentions her love of Lawrence of Arabia. Yeah, Lawrence of Arabia, it's one of the most epic films of all time. And epic is a word that gets overused a lot in modern pop culture, but I think it is epic because the word epic comes from the great Greek epics like the Odyssey and texts like that, where it's about someone traveling over a long distance. It's a long story. Lawrence of Arabia is almost 4 hours long, and obviously they cover a lot of ground in that film. So yeah, truly is an epic film. Some of the best cinematography of all time. And obviously it's got that really famous cut. There's a really famous edit in Lawrence of Arabia, which gets taught in a lot of film editing courses. Let's go down the chat. I've just seen a super chat from Nathan. Nathan says, congrats again, friend. I'm very happy to be in this community. You are doing some great work, Elliot. Unfortunately, I must leave. Cheers. Thank you so much for joining me, Nathan. I'll chat to you. I'll probably chat to you later tonight, actually. But thank you so much for joining us, Nathan. That really does mean a lot, and it's been great. It's been great meeting to you. It's been great meeting you and talking to you. So thank you so much. Yeah, again, don't worry if you have to drop out of this live stream. I understand that I don't want to keep you here all night. This should get saved as a video on the YouTube channel. So if you have to go for whatever reason, yeah, you can come back to this at any time. And it's also pretty good on YouTube because if you watch a live video that's recorded, it keeps the live chat as well, so you can see people's reaction in real time, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Oh yeah, going back to the UK Criterion question, Daniel very correctly mentions that 12 Angry Men is a good starting point, for sure. Yeah, 12 Angry Men, tremendous film. 12 Angry Men, it's a film that I think about a lot. And if you've seen 12 Angry Men, you know that most of it, well, pretty much all of it, is set in this one room, and it's just these 12 guys talking, and it feels like it shouldn't work. It feels like it's not very cinematic, but in actual fact, it is. The way it's been directed and the way it's written really does work. So yeah, 12 Angry Men, if you've not seen that, is a great one to start with. Sammy asks, what is my white whale film? So a movie that I really need to see that is massive in importance, but just haven't watched yet. Gosh, I don't know what that is. What would I choose? I mentioned earlier that when I got into films properly a few years ago, I had so many of those white whale films. Like I'd never seen The Godfather. I'd never seen Pulp Fiction, Fight Club, all of these big films that people talk about, I'd just never seen. So I did manage to catch up on pretty much everything I've not watched. Let me think. In terms of white whale films that I've not seen, I might have to come back to you on that. I'll come back. I'll think of something. Yeah. Let me just see. AM asks, did I go to university? And if so, what did you study? Yes, I did go to university. I went to University of Manchester here in the UK, and I studied economics. So I did a lot of counting, a lot of maths. And there was a lot of graphs and a lot of equations. Yeah, it's quite different to being into film. Like, yeah. And my job at the moment is kind of linked to what I did at university. It's in finance, so it's not, my job at the moment isn't related to films at all. But yeah, that's what I did at university. I did economics. Let's see. Sexy Monkey says, Dazed and Confused is Richard Linklater's masterpiece. So I'd agree with that. I do. Dazed and Confused might be my favorite Linklater film. But then Sexy Monkey goes on to say, I'm afraid that I hated Boyhood. I appreciated what they were going for, but the boy was so uninteresting. Yeah, Boyhood's one of those films that I think really does divide people. Some people see Boyhood as just a gimmick film, because obviously it was filmed over 12 years. They filmed a few weeks every summer over 12 years. Yeah, I do enjoy Boyhood. I like Boyhood. It's not my favorite Linklater film, but I totally see where people are coming from saying that they didn't like Boyhood. I can see why people say it's a gimmick. I would say it's more of an experiment. It's a risk, because it's a risk that could have failed horribly. So I think it's a pure miracle that Boyhood even exists in its current state, in its final form as a film. Because look, they could have picked someone, they could have picked a kid, and the kid could have just gone halfway through filming, so 6 years down the line, just gone, I'm not doing this anymore. And then it just wouldn't have happened. Or, God forbid, someone could have died in the time that Boyhood was being filmed. One of the key actors could have died. So the fact that it exists is kind of a miracle of just everything happening at the right time. Right, just going through. Joel Barish at the movies says, what do you think of the works from Andrew Haigh? Yeah, Andrew Haigh, I do. Is it Haigh or Hay? I don't know how you pronounce it, actually. Yeah, I really enjoy his films. I like 45 Years. 45 Years is in the Criterion Collection as well. As is Weekend. I do like Weekend as well. But I think my favorite from him is actually Lean on Pete, which was his last film. Lean on Pete is just a great quiet film. That's probably a funny way to describe his films, but they are kind of quiet. But Lean on Pete is a great film. If you like horses, it's a great horse film. Let's see who else is in the chat. Yeah, keep the questions coming in, guys. Keep them coming in. Sorry, I'm just having a quick drink. Don't mind me. Once again, thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm not sure how long I'm going to go for today. Gosh, we've been going an hour already. We've been chatting an hour. But I'll keep going. I'm in no rush. I'm trapped in this house during lockdown. So yeah, we'll see how long we go. Just keep firing the film questions at me, or any questions. Just ask me whatever you want, within reason, obviously. Don't ask me like what my password is. I'm not gonna answer that. Gary Sullivan asks, do I keep track of my film journey with any software or website? I prefer Mubi, but there's tons out there. Yes, Gary, I use Letterboxd. So I'm not as active on Letterboxd as I used to be, because I used to actually post a lot of reviews on Letterboxd. Now I just kind of log the film in the diary, and I give it a star rating, but that's not really my reflection of the film. That's kind of a reminder for me on how I felt about the film at the time. But yeah, Letterboxd. Letterboxd is a great website and a great app that you can get for your phones, because you can keep a diary, so you can log the exact date that you watched a film. You can leave a review. Yeah, you can put your score down that you give the film, but also as a way of discovering new films. Letterboxd is a great tool. It's a great tool for discovering films, because you can follow people on there. You can read their reviews, and you can then, if you find a filmmaker or an actor or whatever that you like, you can then click on them, and then you can look at every film that they've done, or every film they're in. So great way to discover new films. And also, what I enjoy doing on Letterboxd, if you guys are on Letterboxd, you can go and you can rank every film that's on Letterboxd, which is pretty much every film ever. You can rank them by the highest average rating from every user that's logged that film. And it's quite interesting, because that list, it shows you like what people consider the top film ever made, by an aggregate score. So I think at the moment, Parasite is number one on Letterboxd, but then it's like The Godfather. But if you go down that list, you then start hitting some really interesting titles that you've probably not heard of. I hadn't heard of it, and then I would add it to my watch list. So yeah, in a roundabout way, Gary, I use Letterboxd to track my film journey. Let's. Oh, and I just saw that Scolder asked the same question as well. I used to make a list on Letterboxd of every Blu-ray that I own, but I stopped keeping that up because I was buying too many Blu-rays, basically. The Cinematech asks, do I have any directors or genres that I would like to watch more of? I'm trying to think. In terms of, I'm trying to think. That's a good question. I'd probably say, rather than genres or directors, it would more be like looking into different film movements or certain countries and their film industries, because there are some film industries and countries that I haven't watched many films of at all. Something I've been intrigued by, of the bits that I've seen from it, is a lot of Indian cinema. So in terms of films from India, I'm only really familiar with the films from Satyajit Ray, like the Apu trilogy and Charulata and The Big City and things like that. But recently I've been watching clips from a lot of Bollywood films and a lot of Tamil films. So there's a huge actor from the Tamil films, Rajikant. I think, is it Rajikant? I've been wanting to get more and more into that stuff. But I think in the UK, it's really hard to watch those Tamil films with English subtitles. But from what I've seen, I've really enjoyed those. So that's what I'd say. I'd want to get more into modern Indian cinema. That's something that does make me curious, but I've just not spent much time on. Sorry, I'm just reading through all the comments. Flash997 asked, what kind of bookshelves do I have? I talked about this a bit earlier. These bookshelves, they're just on Amazon. So I can't remember the exact name of them. But if you look on Amazon, if you look for CD shelves or DVD shelves, they come up in that search. What I'm going to do is, I promise, I've been promising this a lot, but I'm going to do a video on these particular Blu-ray shelves and where you can get them. And I'll give a link to Amazon as well. Let's see. Who else is in the chat? David Khan asks, what made me start a YouTube channel? I talked a bit about it before, but I was watching a lot of film reviews on YouTube. And I decided, I said, I can give that a go. I found out it's actually a lot harder to do. Like, being on camera is actually quite stressful at times because you can get quite nervous. You can start to think, I still get that every video I do now, honestly, every video I do, before I do the video, I'm like, I know nothing. What am I going to say? I know nothing about films. Why would anyone want to listen? But then you get over that. And especially when you guys are joining in the comments and saying, like, you found some kind of use from what I've said, then it makes me want to do another one. But yeah, what made me start a channel was just watching a lot of YouTube videos and thinking that, that can't be that hard, then realizing it is kind of hard. But yeah, that's what made me start it. Have I seen American Pop or King of New York? American Pop, I'm not too sure what that is. So I'm not familiar with that one, but King of New York I have seen. If you're talking about the Abel Ferreira film with Christopher Walken, that is one that I do really enjoy, actually. It's a great cult film, that one, King of New York. Josh asks, is there any films that gave me sleepless nights? Sleepless nights. Well, I remember the first time I watched The Exorcist, that stuck with me a lot. Yeah, The Exorcist, just in terms of, the pure horror in The Exorcist. Obviously, The Exorcist is one of the most famous horror films of all time, but yeah, that definitely, I wouldn't say it gave me sleepless nights, because I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. Like, I don't really find trouble going to sleep. But yeah, that was scary, and that did it did make me like second guess being alone in the dark. Right, let's keep the questions coming in, by the way, guys, or keep the comments coming in. If there's anything you want to ask me, or if there's anything you want to say, yeah, feel free to ask me anything, because that's kind of what I'm here for. We're celebrating 2,000 subscribers, which is great. Thank you everyone who's involved now and who's left comments and stuff. But yeah, feel free to ask anything about films or about me or about YouTube. If you've got any questions about how to do this, if you need any tips or anything. Let me have a look at the questions. Cinephiliac asks, what films have I cried at? A lot. I wouldn't say I'm an easy crier, but yeah, when a film really hits me, it hits me. And yeah, but if off the top of my head, yeah, Ikiru. You mentioned Ikiru. That was one I've cried at. Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah, Make Way for Tomorrow, for sure, as well as Tokyo Story. Tokyo Story, which bears a lot of similarities with Make Way for Tomorrow. I'm trying to think recently. Maybe this is embarrassing, maybe not. A film that I always cry at is Coco, the Pixar film. Like at the end, I don't know if it's just how they manipulate us through music and things, but every time I watch Coco, it makes me cry, and I don't know why. Every single time, Coco will make me cry. Oh yeah, I see some of you guys talking about Letterboxd. There are a lot of joke reviews on Letterboxd, and I'm not huge. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think a lot of that's kind of the influence of, you know, Twitter and memes. Let's be honest, when people leave a film review and it's just a joke, first of all, it's not really criticism, and it's not really an honest. It's not an honest comment on what you thought about the film. It's kind of like, hey, let's make you laugh, kind of thing. So yeah, I totally get why on Letterboxd and IMDb you wouldn't want to use it because of all the joke reviews, because it can get a bit over the top all the time. Twiggy Twinkie asks, which do I prefer, Uncut Gems or Good Time? I'm going to go with Uncut Gems, but I do think Good Time is great. I think with Uncut Gems, the Safdie brothers took a lot of what they did in Good Time and they perfected it with Uncut Gems. Yeah, so definitely Uncut Gems over Good Time. Both of those films though are so stressful to watch, because in both of those you're watching characters who are doing they're making all the wrong decisions. And there's a bit of dramatic irony in that we know they're making terrible decisions, yet they're still going down that route. Because you have that with Robert Pattinson's character in Good Time, and then of course with Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. They both have great soundtracks though, by what's he called? Tricks Point Never. Let's see who else is in the comments. What are some of my favorite Czech New Wave films? Some of the early films from Milos Forman, so Fireman's Ball and Black Peter. I also like Intimate Lighting, Daisies from Vera Hitilova. Yeah, Czech New Wave. I mentioned in my recent video about the second run films that I bought. I'm looking to get more into the Czech New Wave. I've got a lot of watching to do for the Czech New Wave, so that should be fun to delve into. Sammy asked, what's some of my favorite BFI video releases? Of recent years, BFI, they released La Belle et la Bête, so Beauty and the Beast, from Cocteau, which is available on Criterion, but the restoration of the UK BFI disc is superior to the Criterion, so that was a great release. Same with The Wages of Fear. They released that, which trumps the Criterion release. And then other BFI releases, the Woodfall set is great, which highlights a lot of British cinema from the 60s. And then the James Ivory film Morris, that's a great release. Yeah, so they're some of my favorite BFI releases. I know I've not talked much about BFI on the channel, but BFI do a lot of great releases. AM asked, what is the most atmospheric film that I have ever seen? His would probably be Blade Runner. Most atmospheric. I mean, Blade Runner is very atmospheric. I'm trying to think of those films that like fully they fully immerse you in their world. Um, I always find that with when I watch The Matrix, the original Matrix film from 1999. Not only does that immerse me fully into both of the worlds in that film, because obviously that's dealing with two different worlds, but it also transports me back to when I first saw The Matrix on DVD. And I watched The Matrix when I was quite young. I didn't understand it, and I was kind of grossed out by some of it as well. Some of the early stuff in that film, when Neo's mouth is stitching up and stuff, I was really freaked out by that. But yeah, The Matrix, I can put The Matrix on right now, and that fully immerses me in the atmosphere, because it's very of its time, in that it's all about like cyberpunk. It's anticipating the Millennium Bug in a way, which obviously we all survived. We all survived the Millennium Bug. But yeah, The Matrix is definitely my answer to that. Let's see who else is in the chat. Oh, Chris Mohan's here. Hi, Chris. How you doing? Chris says, like many of us, you seem to be rapidly running out of space. Any plans? I think I need an extension. Yeah, I am rapidly running out of space. To be honest, there's more films that aren't here that are in storage at my parents' house. So yeah, I am running out of space. My plans, buy a bigger house. No, yeah, I try not to think about it. But what I'll say is, I am now going to start making a conscious decision to limit what I buy. So maybe, you guys can keep me, you can keep me accountable for this. But I said to myself that I'm going to stop buying as many in one go. So my film hauls on this channel might be a bit smaller, but it's all about quality, not quantity, isn't it, at the end of the day? But yeah, I guess, my answer to that, Chris, is that I just have to stop buying as many, because otherwise they're going to be like stacked on the floor. There's just going to be stacks everywhere. So yeah. Steve Mack says, I watched Dogtooth last week, embarking on a Yorgos Lanthimos fact-finding mission. It's a weird and sometimes callously violent film, but I did find it interesting. Yeah, Dogtooth is, it's very weird. And Dogtooth, Dogtooth is sometimes a film that I think I don't like, and then sometimes I think I do like it. I know that sounds kind of contradictory. Sometimes when I watch Dogtooth, I feel like with that film, Lanthimos was kind of going for the shock value. He was going for like, this film's so weird, and it goes into areas regarding the relationships of those characters, which are kind of uneasy. Yeah, I'd say Dogtooth. I know people love Dogtooth as a film, and it's one I'll definitely watch again. But in terms of Lanthimos, I much prefer the films that came after. So I do enjoy The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Favourite. So I'm looking forward to what he does next. Oh, non-Lanthimos. The Favourite was interesting because, so The Favourite was the first film that I believe wasn't written by Lanthimos. So all of his other films he wrote and directed, whereas The Favourite was written by other people. Yet it shows how strong of a director Lanthimos is, or his voice in his directing, because I feel like The Favourite very much feels like his other films, but obviously he didn't write the dialogue. So it shows how much of what his films are is in the directing, not just the writing. But it'll be interesting to see what Lanthimos does next. I don't have a clue what he's doing next. Cinephiliac asks, what's my favorite Bela Tarr film? I've only seen one, I think. I've only seen The Turin Horse, so I'd have to go with that one being my only one. I do really want to see Satan Tango, which is coming out on Blu-ray. and is 7 hours long. So yeah, I'm eager to see that because many people say Satan Tango is one of the best films. Oh, Gary says, I second Andre's question. Favorite Japanese films? Oh, I must have missed your question, Andre. Sorry. Yeah, favorite Japanese films. I'm a big fan of Ozu. I'm a big fan of Ozu. So my favorite Ozu films would be his last film, which is An Autumn Afternoon, is one of my favorites. And I often strangely, and this might be controversial to people, but when talking about Ozu's filmography, I often recommend people to start at the end and watch An Autumn Afternoon first, because I think An Autumn Afternoon is not his favorite, is not his most acclaimed film. That might be Tokyo Story or Late Spring, but I feel with An Autumn Afternoon, which was his last film, it's like the culmination of all of his works, and it's where I think it's where all of his styles and his messages and things are all so condensed in that final film that if you watch An Autumn Afternoon, you get a really good idea of if you're going to like the rest of his films. Whereas I feel like if you watch some of his earlier films, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, it is kind of controversial because some people say I'll start with Tokyo Story or Late Spring. But yeah, favorite Japanese film. So Ozu, I love Ozu and An Autumn Afternoon, and Good Morning. Good Morning is a great one. Other Japanese films, I love Tampopo. Tampopo is a great one. I love when I was at Cannes in 2018. At Cannes, I saw a film called Asako 1 and 2. Asako 1 and 2 is a great film. I saw the cut version because I believe originally there was like a 5-hour version of this film. But yeah, Asako 1 and 2 is a great Japanese film. Other Japanese films I love. Obviously, I love Kurosawa. I love Mizoguchi. I love Bakumatsu Taioden. That's a great one. I love the works of Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli. What else? What else? Japanese films. Why am I blanking on? I'm blanking on Japanese films. I like the films of Kiyoshi Kurosawa as well. I love Cure. Cure is a great film. Yeah, that's about all I can think of off the top of my head. Those are some of my favorite Japanese films. Let's see. Oh yeah, and obviously other anime films because I can see it in the chat. Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, Sexy Monkey mentions that Ghost in the Shell has become my favorite film ever. Beautiful on every level. I can't totally appreciate The Matrix because they took so much directly from it. Yeah, so yeah, moving on from Japanese films, that question, Ghost in the Shell and Akira are such important films to me because I was watching them really just as I was about to properly get into cinema. So yeah, you mentioned Ghost in the Shell. I love that film so much. I love the music in that film. The choir, the female choir chanting, which in Ghost in the Shell, so that music feels so iconic to Ghost in the Shell, but I believe that music is based upon Bulgarian female choirs and like female choral music. So I remember watching Ghost in the Shell, really liking the main music in Ghost in the Shell, and then going and listening to all of these Bulgarian choir musics. So yeah, if you like the music in Ghost in the Shell, I definitely recommend Bulgarian choral music. That's just a weird tangent. Opinions on Marcel Carnet. Have I ever seen Les Enfants du Paradis? It's my all-time favorite film, probably. No, I've not seen Children of Paradise, Les Enfants du Paradis. But I have seen Port of Shadows, which is a Le Quai de Boom. So I've seen that, which is Carne, I think. But no, I've not seen Children of Paradise, and I should because many people say it's a great film. Johnny asks, what is my favorite indicator criterion Arrow Blues? I mean, that is a massive question, because that's basically asking me what is my favorite of all these things here. Favorite indicator Blu-ray. I mean, I've done videos about indicator before, but films that I love: Charlie Varick from Don Siegel, Body Double from Brian De Palma. I always forget the long title list, but is it The Effect of Man in the Moon Marigolds? Oh, I forget the one with Joan Woodward, based on the play. That is a great indicator release. I'm totally blanking on what it's called. Favorite Criterion Blu-rays. I mean, I mentioned Barry Lyndon before. I'll mention this because it's right here. Sweet Smell of Success from the great Alexander McKendrick. We mentioned noir films earlier. One of the greatest. It's a great noir film that's not really about. It's not about a detective. It's not really about crime. It's just more about the seediness of people and what people will do to get what they want. So I mentioned that. While I'm here, something I watched that I went into the other day. Well, just last night I watched, actually. I started watching some of these David Lean films. So these are the David Lean directs Noel Coward. So of course, Brief Encounter is a really famous film. But I watched, for the first time, I watched last night, This Happy Breed, which is a great, great film. Because it stars Celia Johnson, who's in Brief Encounter. So if you're asking me my favorite Criterion releases, I'm just picking up these ones that are on my desk here. Favorite Arrow Blu-rays. Big Trouble in Little China, or Videodrome, or the Sartana box set. Yeah, that's just off the top of my head. Obviously it's a broad question, but I could go into more detail. Yeah, Sexy Monkey mentions Blue Collar from Indicator. Yeah, Blue Collar from Paul Schrader with Harvey Keitel and Richard Pryor. Great film. Yeah, I think you mentioned before, actually, Sexy Monkey, that you think it's one of the best films of the 70s, which, yeah, it is definitely one of the best, for sure. What's the best movie decade? This is quite an interesting one. The best, a lot of people say the 70s is one of the best. I'm a huge fan of 70s cinema, because if we're looking at the 70s, okay, let's just look at some of the great films that came out in the 70s. So you got Barry Lyndon, which was 1975. So that's my favorite film of all time. You've got Star Wars from 1977, which made such an impression on me as a child. You've got so many American filmmakers that started out in the 70s. So you've got Scorsese with like Mean Streets and Taxi Driver. You've got Francis Ford Coppola with his big four. So his big four being Godfather Part 1 and 2, The Conversation, and Apocalypse Now. Also in the 70s, you've got the beginnings of Spielberg. So you've got Jaws and Close Encounters. What else have you got in the 70s? I think it was also 1975 that Fellini's Amarcord came out, which for me is one of my favorite Fellini films. What other big films came out in the 70s? Because I'm trying to make a point that the 70s might be the best decade, but maybe it isn't. What other big films came out in the 70s? Other decades that I really enjoyed, the 40s. And I know people say that 1939 is one of the best years for film, because 1939 was when Wizard of Oz came out, wasn't it? What else came out? Oh yeah, Alien. Alien came out in 1979. Yeah, Eraserhead. Yeah, in terms of horror, yeah. So in the 70s, you had Omen, Exorcist, and Halloween. Suspiria. Agira Wrath of God. Yeah, for sure. From Werner Herzog. Hausu. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Because Hausu came out in the 70s, clearly best decade. Did Salò came out in the 70s, didn't it? What year did Salò come out? I'm gonna have to look that up now. Yeah, Texas Chainsaw, all that jazz. Yeah, so like 70s were massive. Let's have a look. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. Oh, I can see Cinephiliac asked what my favorite David Lean film is. Well, of course, I just talked about some of the Noel Coward collaborations. But Lawrence of Arabia, also from David Lean, I love his adaptation of Great Expectations with Alec Guinness. That's great. I also love from David Lean Hobson's Choice with the great Charles Lawton, which is set just down the road from me. That's set in just outside Manchester in Salford. So yeah, that one's close to home. Yeah, David Lean, what a great filmmaker. The one David Lean film that I've not seen that I really do want to see is Summertime. I've never seen Summertime, and I'm hoping that Summertime gets a good Blu-ray release at some point. Sidney Lumet said that Akira Kurosawa is the Beethoven of cinema. I'm inclined to agree. I mean, yeah. I wonder what he meant by the Beethoven of cinema, though, because that could mean anything. But yeah, in terms of greatness and the impact, because obviously Beethoven had a massive impact on popular music over the last few hundred years. Yeah, Akira Kurosawa, his impact is still being seen today with so many filmmakers. What's my favorite René Laloux film? I haven't seen any René Laloux films. Is it René Laloux that did? Is it The Illusionist? I've not seen it though, so I don't have any that I can talk about, unfortunately. What's some of my favorite underrated directors and actors? Underrated directors and actors. Right, let's talk about some modern underrated directors. Oh, that's really hard. That's really hard because obviously when I think of directors and actors I like, I'm thinking about the ones that are mentioned a lot. Underrated directors. A director that I really like, a UK director, is Ben Wheatley. Ben Wheatley made quite a lot of good films, like a Kill List. And then he made some films that a lot of people didn't like A Field in England and High Rise. Yeah, Ben Wheatley is a director that I would say is underrated in terms of UK directors. Older directors that I think are underrated are a lot of the directors that worked within studio systems during the 60s and 70s, but had a clear, distinct vision and were just great at the craft. So filmmakers like John Schlesinger, or Schlesinger, I don't know how you say his name, John Frankenheimer, Robert Aldrich, Richard Fleischer, just these directors that were churning out films for the studio systems who aren't really seen as auteurs and aren't like seen as making some of the best films ever. Alan J. Pakula as well from the 70s, because I watched Clute recently, which is a great film. Um, another filmmaker I really like from the 70s, because we were talking about the 70s, Sidney Pollack. I really like some of Sidney Pollack's films. Because I mentioned Tootsie before, but I like Jeremiah Johnson. I like the Yakuza. So yeah, Sidney Pollack is an underrated director. Yeah, underrated actors. Oh, that's too hard. I can't think of any underrated actors. Because the trick with asking someone who you think is underrated, obviously I rate them very highly, so it's hard to pick. But yeah, I hope I kind of answered the question there. Geologia asks, are Akira and Ghost in the Shell my favorite animated films? They're up there for sure. If we're talking anime films, I'm a huge fan of Studio Ghibli. If we're talking animated films in general, I do really like a lot of the early Disney classics, because I watched a lot of those as a child on VHS and they've just stuck with me. So I like a lot of I like films like Bambi. I like films like Pinocchio, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Yeah, just some of those early Disney hand-drawn animated films are definitely some of my favorites. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah. An animated film that I liked from a few years ago is Kubo and the Two Strings. I really liked the animation in that, because it's all like stop motion, and it was really interesting watching the behind the scenes of how they made Kubo and the Two Strings. Sorry, I'm just going down the questions. Keep the questions coming in. If you want to ask me anything, feel free to ask. Even if we've not chatted before, if you're new here, thank you for being here, but also feel free to ask anything. Feel free. Favorite film by Jacques Tati? I've got the Tati Criterion box set, which I would recommend to everyone. And there's also a box set in the UK from Studio Canal, which has all of the same films. I do really like Jour de Fête, which is one of the first ones in that set. But Playtime's a classic. The Jacques Tati films are great films to watch during this lockdown, because they're nice and pleasant. Nice and pleasant films, not that too hard going. They're going to make you feel good. I think this is in relation to modern filmmakers, but yeah, Barry Jenkins. Yeah, Barry Jenkins is a filmmaker I definitely like. See, it's weird, because would you say Barry Jenkins is an underrated director, though? Because obviously Moonlight won Best Picture at the Oscars. But then his second film, or his film after Moonlight, If Beale Street Could Talk, I really enjoyed that one. And that felt like it got no... Beale Street got no attention at all. So yeah, I really like that film. So maybe Barry Jenkins is underrated. If we're talking the new wave of like, it's probably what you call independent filmmakers, but they're not really. It's hard to call them independent because they're backed by big studios. But a lot of these films that are being distributed by A24, so filmmakers like Robert Eggers and Ari Aster and the Safdie brothers. Yeah, I'm really into those films. Who do I think is the most overrated director? That kind of question, it's difficult. It's difficult. I don't really like slamming anyone. So like, hopefully you won't hear me like properly slam anyone. But directors that are overrated, I don't know. I'd maybe be inclined to say Quentin Tarantino. That said, uh, some of Quentin Tarantino's films I really love. I really do love. I'd say he's overrated because Tarantino is probably the first director you hear someone mention when if you ask someone who's a director, they probably would say Tarantino. And I've met so many people that say, "Oh, Tarantino is the best filmmaker ever," and it's cool. It's cool if you believe that, if you genuinely believe that. But I feel like a lot of people don't. I feel a lot of people say Tarantino is the best, or Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan is a filmmaker whose films I do like. I do like Nolan's films, and I think he does a lot of good things in his films. But again, Christopher Nolan is one of those directors that people fanboy hard. They fanboy him hard, and they will say he's the best filmmaker ever. Which again, it's cool if you believe he is the best filmmaker ever. That's cool. All power to you. But in my opinion, yeah, his films are he as a filmmaker, he's kind of overrated because I think there are people doing films as good as his films who get like no attention. So that's what I'd mean by overrated. I'm not slamming Tarantino or Nolan because I love their films. But yeah, I'd probably go for them as being overrated directors. Tony asks, what are my thoughts on Wes Anderson? I really enjoy I do enjoy films by Wes Anderson. I guess Wes Anderson might fall into that category of being overrated. I think that when I say Wes Anderson might be overrated, I love Wes Anderson's films. I really, really do, and I love the releases that Criterion do of his films. I would say Wes Anderson might be overrated because, like Tarantino and Nolan, these are filmmakers that the cinema-going masses, so people that are just generally into films, they're not like big cinephiles. These are directors that people can pick out and go, "Oh, that is a Wes Anderson film. That is a Tarantino film." They're the kind of, Tarantino, Wes Anderson, Christopher Nolan. These are the directors whose names are in big writing on their film posters. You don't get that with, I can't think who else, but like you wouldn't get that with a Barry Jenkins film, or you wouldn't get that with, gosh, I'm blanking. I'm blanking on big directors now. But yeah, I'm not slamming these directors. It's a tricky question to ask. It's a tricky question because I'm not slamming their films. And yeah, Sexy Monkey says it's not a popular opinion, but Jackie Brown is my favorite Tarantino film. Yeah, that's my favorite Tarantino film. I think Jackie Brown, it's probably because Jackie Brown is his least Tarantino film, if that makes sense. Because it's Jackie Brown is like Jackie Brown. So Jackie Brown shows off all of the skill and the vision that Tarantino has, but it doesn't have all the Tarantino-esque things that all of his other films have. And I love Jackie Brown because I love a lot of those old blaxploitation films. Like Coffee is one of my favorite cult films. It's one of my favorite like midnight movies is just to watch Coffee. So I love Jackie Brown for its taking those blaxploitation inspirations. Yeah. And Tarantino, it's interesting because obviously Tarantino's latest film came out last year. And some people love that film, some people thought it was rubbish. And yeah, that's a film that I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has a lot more going for it than maybe some of his other films in terms of what you can delve into. But again, I need to rewatch that because I only saw it once. Um, just going through the comments. Uh, Sexy Monkey asked, "What are my thoughts on With Nail and I?" It's a film I've not seen actually. Maybe that's one of the big films that I should have seen that I've not. But yeah, With Nail and I haven't actually seen that. Pink Velvet asked, "Have I watched any Corinne film?" So that's Harmony Corinne or Corrine. I don't know how you say the name. The only film I've seen is Spring Breakers, and Spring Breakers is a film that I actually love. I think Spring Breakers is a great film. It really blew me away, actually. Just in terms of it, I went into Spring Breakers thinking it's just going to be some trashy, like Spring Break film. But there are bits in that film where it just goes totally pure cinema. There's a famous scene in Spring Breakers where that Britney Spears song plays, and it's this montage sequence, and it's like pure cinema. It's great. So yeah, Spring Breakers is a film that I do love. I mean, has anyone else seen Spring Breakers? Does anyone love Spring Breakers? I've not seen. Is it The Beach Bum? I've not seen that. That was his latest film. Sorry if I missed your question. By the way, I'm terrible at keeping track of this chat. So if I've missed your question, or if you want to ask me something, just by all means, just drop it in the chat. Because we're having a good time here. We're all having a good time. I'm sweating my balls off though. Sorry to be graphic, but the heat is getting really bad over the last week or so here in the UK. I mean, it's been nice outside. The sun has been shining. It's been really shining, but when you're inside here, yeah, it gets quite hot. Let's see what else. Frank Burleson said, "But no one writes better dialogue than Tarantino, or has as many iconic movies." Yeah, no, I'd agree. Tarantino's dialogue is great, and for many screenwriters, I mean, screenwriters are told, go and study Tarantino's scripts because they're great, and I would agree in terms of screenwriting and great dialogue that really hooks people. Yeah, Tarantino is great at that. He's great. And then when you listen to Tarantino talk in an interview, I mean, he's a divisive guy. Some people like Tarantino as a person and some people hate him, but he kind of talks like the people in his films. And you kind of think like, he's not just, this dialogue isn't just being pulled out of nowhere. He probably has all these thoughts in his head. He's probably a lot like some of his characters. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what I'm saying now. Right, let's go. Oh, I can see some love for Spring Breakers. Pink Velvet says, yeah, Spring Breakers is awesome. Twiggy Twinkie says, look at all my shit. Spring Break forever. Yeah, Gummo. Gummo's not a film I've seen from Corinne, but I do want to watch that. What's my favorite shot of feet in a Tarantino film? I don't know. It's funny, you've just mentioned shot of feet. That made me think of there was a meme going around from the Oscars of it was like Tarantino clapping, and it's a picture of that scene in Parasite when the mother has her feet up on the back of the car seat, and it's like, this is made for Tarantino. It's just a woman showing off her feet in a film. Let's just see. Have I seen any of the Italian comedies in the Criterion collection, like Il Sorpasso, Divorce Italian Style, Seduced and Abandoned, or Il Mafioso? No, I've seen bits of Divorce Italian style, and I've seen bits. I've not watched it in full though. Il Sorpasso I've not watched, but I do shamefully have it on my shelf there sealed. So I should watch Il Sorpasso at some point. Yeah, I should watch that for sure. If you have any Italian comedy recommendations, I'm all for that. I like a lot of the comedy in some of Fellini's films. So yeah, I mentioned Amarcord before. There's a lot of good comedy in that. Mrs. Baylock's Video Emporium says, asks, is Kubrick the greatest director ever? Is Kubrick the greatest director ever? I don't know. It's really hard to answer that. I said that Barry Lyndon is my favorite film of all time. So, but is Kubrick my favorite director of all time? Maybe not. It depends what you mean by best or greatest director. Do you mean that? Do you mean that all of his films were of a similar level of quality, or do you mean that his greatest films were greater than any other films made, or do you mean that? Do you mean that his vision was most evident in his work, more evident than other filmmakers? It's kind of hard to say. Obviously, Kubrick is one of the best directors of all time. If we're talking Kubrick as well, so obviously Barry Lyndon is my favorite film of all time and my favorite Kubrick film. I also love Eyes Wide Shut. Eyes Wide Shut is a great one. I'd love Eyes Wide Shut to get a Criterion release, just because I know Eyes Wide Shut has a Blu-ray already, but Eyes Wide Shut with some new special features. So if we could get like some new commentaries on there from film critics or film historians. I was in a live chat on YouTube last night with Huss from A Touch of Film. And the guys in that film chat, they were talking about Eyes Wide Shut and about Eyes Wide Shut being such a snapshot of late 20th century living. So we're talking late 90s. It's a snapshot of ideal living from many people, looking at high living at the end of the 20th century. So maybe Eyes Wide Shut isn't looked on now as like an amazing film by many, but in terms of going in the future, I think people will look back on Eyes Wide Shut and go, no, this is actually remarkable because it's showing exactly the thoughts of people at the time. So hopefully that makes sense. Who else is in the chat? Get involved in the chat, people, if you want. Feel free to get involved in the chat. It's all friendly here. Timothy Theatre SM. Hello, Timothy. How are you doing? I hope you're doing okay tonight, or today, whatever time it is where you are, because it's almost 9 p.m. here in the UK. What's my favorite David Lynch film? Maybe Mulholland Drive. But I don't know. I feel with David Lynch. So I've seen a lot of David Lynch's films now, but I would by no means call myself an expert. I'd by no means say that I know exactly why I enjoy his films. I know it's to do with how he creates these worlds and the dream logic. If you're watching Twin Peaks or if you're watching Mulholland Drive or Blue Velvet, he creates these worlds that aren't realistic. They're quite surreal. They feel distant, but then they also can feel real, and they feel lived in. Yeah. So I don't know. I need to watch a lot more of David Lynch. I need to watch his films a lot more because most of his films I've only seen once or twice. But for now, I'd probably say Mulholland Drive. Kubrick managed to make stunning films in almost every genre, which I don't think many others have managed. Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, if you look at, he tackled sci-fi with 2001, film noir with The Killing. He tackled comedy with Doctor Strangelove. He tackled historical drama with Barry Lyndon, horror with The Shining. Eyes Wide Shut, you could say he tackled erotic films, you could say. Yeah, many people say that 2001: A Space Odyssey is Kubrick's tribute to science, because he was obsessed with science on the moon and, you know, things like that, and the space program. But Barry Lyndon is his tribute to art and visual art. And, you know, that includes cinema, but I think also when you're talking about classic art, if you're talking about fine art and paintings, when you watch Barry Lyndon, any shot in that film, you could take out of that film and frame it, and it's composed like a lot of classical and Renaissance paintings. So for sure, Barry Lyndon is his tribute to art and to music, because the classical music used in Barry Lyndon is tremendous as well. So I could talk about Kubrick a lot. It's hard to believe that Woody Allen was Kubrick's first casting choice for Eyes Wide Shut, but he was. I didn't know that. I didn't know that, actually. That would be a totally different film. That really would be a different one. I recently watched Crimes and Misdemeanors, which was a great film. You read that Harvey Keitel was in Eyes Wide Shut, but he was edited out. Oh, I didn't know that either. God, it shows how much I know about Eyes Wide Shut. That just the thought of a major actor being edited out of a film just reminds me of Terrence Malick in The Thin Red Line, and how Adrian Brody thought that he was the main star of Thin Red Line, because apparently Adrian Brody was set up to be the main character of The Thin Red Line. And then Terrence Malick went away and just edited out pretty much all of his footage, which is pretty crazy. And I could see why you'd be annoyed. You'd be annoyed if you were an actor and you thought, oh, I get to work with this great director and we're going to be on a big budget film. And then you just get edited out. It's kind of sad. Yeah, Harvey Keitel was also fired from Apocalypse Now. Favorite Mexican films? I'll be honest, I'm not totally clued up with Mexican cinema. The filmmakers that I'm familiar with from Mexico are like Guillermo del Toro, Alejandro Iñárritu, Alfonso Cuarón. I do have the Criterion release of Canoa, which Canoa is a Mexican film, so I need to watch that, because I know Guillermo del Toro talks a lot about Canoa. And I guess some of the films that I haven't seen, I really want to see some of the Buñuel films. And actually, I was on Reddit the other day, and on the Criterion Collection Reddit page, I saw a link to Guillermo del Toro tweeting about how he is helping Criterion remaster and restore some of the older Mexican films, so really important Mexican films. So more of them are going to be coming to Criterion, which is great. And I think that includes like Los Olvidados from Buñuel. So that'll be great. That would be amazing. Yeah, Viridiana is one I've not seen. So yeah, if that gets a great release, I will be getting that for sure. Oh yeah, Tony mentions when we were talking about Kubrick, I didn't mention Paths of Glory or Full Metal Jacket. But of course, he tackled the war genre, um, and the way that Kubrick would look at war, so like the subject of war, and the way he would satirize it, and like really highlight um, how bleak war is. I mean, he did a lot of that in Barry Lyndon as well. There's the famous sequence in Barry Lyndon early on in the film when the soldiers are marching forward, and they're just getting shot. They're still marching forward in this line because those were the rules of war back then at the time of Barry Lyndon. War was like a game, and that if you were being shot at, you would just keep walking forward, and even if your fellow soldiers were just falling dead, being shot at, you would just carry on, just walking, marching forward. That scene really highlights the farcical nature of war, and yeah, how like when you're outside the war, when you're watching war from the sidelines, some people can almost like fetishize war. Like people say that a lot of war films, rather than being anti-war films, they actually kind of fetishize war. Like some people say that about Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now is said to be an anti-war film because it shows the dangers of war, it shows the needless killing, and it shows how it drives people crazy. But also in Apocalypse Now, you have scenes where, like, with the helicopters and Flight of the Valkyries, and you've got characters like Robert Duvall's character, who just seems crazy and just loves war and lives for war. Some people look at that kind of film and say, "Oh, it actually fetishizes war." It's actually, in a way, it's promoting war. I don't think that about Apocalypse Now, but I can see why some people would think that. But yeah, Kubrick was great at highlighting war and just how bad war is. That's me putting it lightly, saying war is bad. Oh gosh. Yeah, Sexy Monkey says David Lynch is so quiet and mild mannered. It's weird when you consider his films are so different. Yeah, that's something that people always say is when they first hear David Lynch talk, the voice that comes out of David Lynch is just not what you would expect. You would expect David Lynch to sound quite different. You'd expect David Lynch to sound very troubled, but he actually sounds very cheery and happy most of the time. Have I seen any of Vincent Gallo's films? I haven't. I've not seen any Vincent Gallo films. Yeah, so Buffalo 66 is one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, I've not seen any, so maybe I should watch that for sure. Oh, I can see there's mention of Straight Story from David Lynch. Straight Story is on Disney Plus, I believe, because I think Disney hold the rights to Straight Story. So I should give that a watch. Which Yorgos? So this is a question from Citizens TV. Thank you for joining me. What Yorgos Lanthimos film do you think is most likely to get a Criterion release? That's difficult. I would say maybe Dogtooth, because Dogtooth is one of his Greek films, so he made it in Greece. But then I could also later down the line, when the rights get negotiated, something like The Favourite could come to Criterion, because Criterion are no stranger to historical period dramas, and Lanthimos makes no secret of saying that Barry Lyndon inspired a lot of The Favourite. Like a lot of the interiors in The Favourite, you look at that, and the set design is much like Barry Lyndon. And then some of the humor in The Favourite, the dry humor was was very Kubrickian. So I could see The Favourite coming to Criterion. But honestly, any of Lanthimos's films I could see. So yeah. Big Al. So Al, thanks for joining us, Al. He asks, did I see the Kubrick exhibition in London last year? I did not see it in London, but I was in Copenhagen in it was late 2017 actually, so a few years ago now. I was visiting Copenhagen, and in one of the museums there, they had the Kubrick exhibition. So I think it's the same one that would have been in London, because it was the one where a lot of the costumes from his films were there. There was all of the stuff about Kubrick's Napoleon film that never got made, so all of his notes and all of Kubrick's research on Napoleon, which was fascinating. And the costumes from Eyes Wide Shut were there. So yeah, if that's the same exhibition, which I think it is, it was great. It was great being there. Paths of Glory is the film which made Terry Gilliam want to be a filmmaker. That's quite interesting because, yeah, I mean, Paths of Glory is a great film and would be inspiring. I wouldn't necessarily draw the line between Terry Gilliam and Paths of Glory, though, which goes to show that you can watch a film, love a film, be inspired by a film, and then go on to make something completely different. That's what I find funny when you listen to certain filmmakers talk about their favorite films, and you're like, what, this is your favorite film? This looks nothing like what you make. But then that kind of makes sense. Because, like, you know, if I listed all my favorite films and then I went on making films later in my life, they might not look like what I'm inspired by. Yeah, that's interesting to know that Terry Gilliam was inspired by Paths of Glory. So there's still more talk about Kubrick. What's my least favorite Kubrick film? I mean, it's an easy one, but Fear and Desire. Fear and Desire was his first film. Many people say it's his worst film. I just think it's a film that it feels like a first film. It doesn't have too much of what Kubrick went on to do later in his career. So it's not like you can watch Fear and Desire and go, oh, this isn't a great film, but I can see what he was doing. There's not a lot of that. It almost doesn't feel like a Kubrick film. So I'd say Fear and Desire. Citizens TV. I know it's crazy, but I've never seen a Stanley Kubrick film. Would you say there's a specific viewing order to watch them? Shall I go by oldest to newest, or the most popular ones first? I'd say go with the most popular ones. Go with the most popular ones. The great thing about Kubrick, which we mentioned before, is he tackled so many different genres and subjects that you can pretty much dive in anywhere and find things to enjoy. So, like, you could start with A Clockwork Orange or The Shining, and say you watched The Shining and you didn't enjoy it, then you could give 2001 a try, or Barry Lyndon, or Doctor Strangelove. You know, Doctor Strangelove or Paths of Glory. So I would say just go with what's popular. Go read about Kubrick's films, read the synopses, and then just see which one grabs you. Keep the questions coming in, by the way, guys. I don't know how much longer I'll go on for, because we've been going for 2 hours. It does not feel like 2 hours. If you guys have to go, don't worry, this will be saved. If you want me to keep going, though, let me know. If you want me to stick at it. Mrs. Baylock's Video Emporium. Elliot, any hopes of getting John Cassavetes' Criterion box set released here in England? Plus, is there any way we can lobby for certain releases over here? Thanks. So the way Criterion releases get released over here, it's a rights issue. So when Criterion release a title in the US, it's because they have acquired the US licensing rights for that film or those films. it doesn't mean that they can acquire the rights here in the UK, because they might be held up by another company, and that company might not want to release them or might not want to sell the rights to Criterion. So if you're talking about the John Cassavetes box set, well, I know that the rights are with BFI, because BFI released the UK Blu-rays of the Cassavetes films. So it would be a case of, if those rights lapse, or if Criterion are willing to purchase those rights to release them here, what I would say is, Criterion UK, it doesn't feel like a major priority for Criterion. It actually feels like, I think it's being managed by Sony. So Sony in the UK are managing Criterion's distribution. So a lot of the films you'll notice that get released on Criterion in the UK are where the rights just aren't held up. So the rights are quite easy to get. So yeah, that's what I'll say. So maybe Cassavetes box set, I wouldn't hold out for it. I'd say if you really, really want it, import it, or just get the BFI, box, BFI single editions, because they're great as well. And is there any way you can lobby for certain releases? No, not really. I honestly don't think it's being run that democratically. I think it's pretty much a side operation, and it's pretty much like, what rights can we get hold of cheaply and release here? I might be totally wrong. I might be. But I get the impression that Criterion UK is not a big operation. It's not. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Twiggy Twinkie asks, what movie have I seen the most and how many times? When I was a child, I grew up with the Star Wars prequels. Well, no, I grew up with the originals when they were re-released in the 90s. But when the prequels came out, I was big on Star Wars. So probably Star Wars Attack of the Clones is my most watched film. I've probably watched that about, 50 times. And I know it's objectively a pretty bad film. But I just think, like, I don't know if I will ever watch a film more than Attack of the Clones, which is pretty sad. Like, if I think of my favorite film now, Barry Lyndon, I think I've seen Barry Lyndon maybe 6 or 7 times, which is a lot. I think seeing a film 6 or 7 times is quite a lot to see a film, especially one that's 3 hours long. Will I get to the point where I've seen Barry Lyndon above 50 times? I don't know. So maybe Star Wars Attack of the Clones will be my most watched film until the day I die, which is kind of shameful. Luca Zach Forever, foolish question, John Ford or Sergio Leone westerns? Which do you appreciate the most? For pure entertainment, the Leone films, because they are really entertaining. John Ford's films are really entertaining as well, but John Ford's films feel more classical. I think John Ford's films look more at human nature than Leone's films do. John Ford's image of the Western is typically American. It's very classical. Whereas when you watch a Leone film, the landscape, obviously a lot of those films weren't made in America. They were filmed in Spain. Like a lot of those deserts were in like Spain, and I think some bits were filmed in Italy as well. But when you watch a Ford film, it feels American. Whereas when you watch a Leone Western, it feels otherworldly. I think when I watch a film like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or something like that, I feel like I'm watching a film that's not set anywhere on Earth. It's like a place that someone's dreamed up. It's dreamt. Leone dreamt up of this this Western mythology. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. The difference between John Ford's films and Leone's films, it's just a difference in mythology, if that makes sense. Because John Ford's films are more historical, Leone's films feel more mythological. But which do I appreciate most? If I had to pick one, I would pick John Ford purely because of craft, and I think John Ford is an incredible visual storyteller and director. Leone is a great one as well, but his films are more like entertaining and more like jump out at you. Shane Harrison asks, "What's my favorite Jim Jarmusch film?" I absolutely love The Dead Don't Die, even though it wasn't received amazingly, and Dead Man is an absolute classic. So The Dead Don't Die, I haven't seen. I did have a chance to watch it on a plane, but I watched Parasite instead. Favorite Jim Jarmusch film? I don't know. I really enjoy. I do enjoy Dead Man. Patterson is a great one. Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai. Really enjoy that. Night on Earth. I like Night on Earth as kind of an anthology film. Let's see who's in the chat. Geologia asks, "Have I considered working in the film industry?" I mean, I've considered it, but I mean that's it's kind of a hard thing because you can't just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to work in the film industry now." It's a notoriously hard thing to get into. Like, yeah, I could quit my job and become an independent filmmaker, but I need to live. I need to make some money, and it's very hard to as a starting out filmmaker. I did go to university for a bit to study screenwriting, so I've studied screenwriting, and I do a lot of screenwriting. Although I haven't been doing it much at all lately, but I do love the craft side of making films, and it is definitely something that I would love to get into one day. I'm hoping that in some way, watching all of these films, I'm absorbing something useful, like in terms of filmmaking. So yeah, I'd love to get into it. Cinephiliac asks, "What's my favorite German expressionism film?" Trying to think. I mean, there's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is a great one. I love the films of Fritz Lang from like the early 30s. So like M. I always I get confused about what to consider German expressionism, because like just some of the Murnau films, factor into that. So like The Last Laugh is one that I love. Physical Media for Life asks, "I would like to know 3 films that you would like to see get a boutique label release, and what label would you pick? Congrats on 2K subs, much deserved." Oh, thank you very much. Let me see. 3 films that I would love to see get a boutique label release. I'd love to see Michael Powell's Peeping Tom get like a really good Blu-ray release. I know Studio Canal released Peeping Tom over here, but I would love to see like Criterion do Peeping Tom. What else? Gosh, I'm trying to think. I can't think off the top of my head. Shane asks, "Have I got a Letterboxd account? Great website and app for logging and keeping track of films." Yes, I do. What is my name on there? I think it's Elliot Elliot _ Yeah, if you look for Elliot _ Cohen, that's my name on there. I think I used to have an old account, but I lost the login details. Do I have any guilty pleasures in terms of films? Do you mean, or other guilty pleasures? I mean, it's difficult because it's hard to think what do you consider a guilty pleasure. Because I don't feel guilty about liking a film. So, like, I mean, I mentioned Spring Breakers before. Many people think that film is trash or whatever. They think it's rubbish. And for many people, that would be a guilty pleasure, but I don't feel guilty about it. I like the film Girls Trip from a few years ago. People would consider that a guilty pleasure, but I really like it. What else? I love the early films from Adam Sandler. So films like Big Daddy, Waterboy, Happy Gilmore, Mr. Deeds. Mr. Deeds, actually, that's probably what I'd consider a guilty pleasure. I don't know what your thoughts on Adam Sandler are, but I have a real soft spot for his early comedies, which I know many people do not like. But yeah, maybe that's a guilty pleasure. Mr. Deeds from Adam Sandler. What's my favorite Richard Ayoade film, The Double or Submarine? I've not seen either of them, actually. But I do really like Richard Ayoade. I like hearing him talk about films. He's very cine literate. I know that Richard Ayoade, that there was a special feature on the Masters of Cinema release of Paths of Glory, which has like a feature of Richard Ayoade talking about that film. And I used to watch the IT Crowd that he stars in. But in terms of films that he's directed, I've not seen any of them. So I should probably catch up on that. Tony asks, what's my favorite contrast paint? Oh, okay, so Tony's talking about, I don't know if you can see in the back here, these little colourful things here. These are little paints, because I paint, something I do in my spare time other than watching films is paint miniatures. So I'll just show you one. So like, I've got some Star Wars miniatures. Can you see that? That's a battle droid from the prequels. So yeah, I build these and I paint them, and then you can play games with them. So favorite contrast paint. This one was what's it called? Skeleton Horde, I think. But that's a totally different thing. Totally different. I should do a separate YouTube channel for painting little men. Alexander says, greetings from Germany. Hello. Have you seen something from Werner Herzog? I love Aguirre and Fitzcarraldo. So I guess that's kind of like a blind spot in my film journey, because I've only seen Aguirre, Wrath of God, I think, from him. So honestly, there's not many Herzog films I've seen. I've seen Herzog in The Mandalorian, though. He's in The Mandalorian. But no, I should watch more, because Aguirre, Wrath of God is a crazy film. And, all of the behind the scenes stuff about how that film was shot in like 2 days. And that opening shot of them walking up the mountains and all the extras and things, it sounds absolutely crazy. Sexy Monkey says he likes Girls Trip, but that's partly because he has a thing for Tiffany Haddish. She's great in that film. And interestingly, I know that Paul Thomas Anderson is a huge fan of Tiffany Haddish. So I'm kind of hoping that she's going to be in his next film, the one that's set in a school in the 70s. Thoughts on Lynn Ramsey? Lynn Ramsey's great director. I really liked You Were Never Really Here, and I really liked We Need to Talk About Kevin. Yeah, Sexy Monkey mentions We Need to Talk About Kevin is one of the most disturbing films he's seen. Yeah. Yeah, Lynn Ramsey's great. Opinions on the French extremity movement. I don't know what does that mean? What is the French extremity movement? Maybe I don't know what that is. Oh, is that to do with like French horror? Like martyrs? Oh, Georgia asks, she says, let's talk modern horror. Okay, let's do it. Do you prefer the films of Robert Eggers or Ari Aster? So I've still not seen The Lighthouse. So I've heard a lot of good things though. Has anyone seen The Lighthouse? Would anyone recommend The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson? But I do really like The Witch. I think The Witch is one of the great modern horror films because it's a film with no jump scares, and it's a film that just we talked. Someone asked earlier about atmosphere in films. The Witch sets a great atmosphere because it's just an atmosphere of like unease and then just like eeriness. But do I prefer the films of Robert Eggers or Ari Aster? I'm going to go with Robert Eggers, even though I've only seen The Witch and I've seen Hereditary and Midsommar. But I'm going to go with Robert Eggers. I think he's doing more of what I like. I feel like with Ari Aster, who you know is a very good filmmaker. I feel like in both Hereditary and Midsommar, while I like both films, they kind of go off the deep end at the end. Like both of them, with both Hereditary and Midsommar, both of those films got to a point where I was like, okay, this is a great time to end it. Don't go any further with the craziness. And then both of those films at the end just go full on crazy, and they show everything. They show Hereditary at the end. I'm not going to spoil it, but Hereditary shows a lot of what was mysterious throughout the whole of the early film. So, Hereditary sets up a lot of mystery with the house, the model house that the mother is building and stuff like that. And you're like, how is this related to what's happening in real life and things like that? And then towards the end of the film, it explains everything and then adds extra. But I guess you could say, thinking about it, you could say The Witch does that, because at the end of The Witch, The Witch kind of just goes fully off the deep end as well. Yeah, a lot of people are saying they like The Lighthouse, so I do really need to see that. Yeah, Georgia says the last 10 minutes of The Lighthouse were the highlight of my year so far. Wow. I hear that The Lighthouse, don't spoil it for me, but The Lighthouse it involves mermaids. There's something about mermaids in it. I know there's that old folk tale of when men were at sea and they would see like a sea lion or a seal in the waters, and they would think it's a mermaid, and they would start falling in love with these sea lions that are in the ship or around the ships. But yeah, I've heard there's mermaids. That's all I've heard. I've heard there's mermaids and they go a bit crazy. Let's see. Keep coming with the questions if you want. Gosh, it's been 2.5 hours. I've been doing this for 2.5 hours. You guys are going to have to let me go soon. What's my thoughts on the HMV first edition Blu-rays? I don't have any of them. and they haven't struck me because those first edition Blu-rays, while they are collector's editions, they do a lot of the things I don't want in a collector's edition. First of all, they still put the BBFC rating logos on the packaging. So look, if you're gonna do a nice collector's box, okay, do not print the ratings logo on the box because it doesn't look nice. I don't think the ratings logo on the box should be on there. So if you're gonna put it on the release, because you have to by law, put it on like a piece of paper or on the packaging that can be taken off. Don't print it on the hard box. And then also with those HMV premium first edition things, they're a bit inconsistent because they did one for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it was like this weird square shape, and the others were like different cases, and I haven't picked up any of them. Like a lot of those films that they've released, I've just picked up the steel books. So I know that 1917 is coming out from that first edition thing, but I think I'm just going to try and get the 4K steelbook. Do I have a favorite Coen Brothers film? Yeah, Barton Fink. Barton Fink is my favorite Coen Brothers film. It's Barton Fink. Like I've said a lot in this live stream that I'm a big fan of screenwriting. So as a story about a screenwriter trying to get through writer's block, Barton Fink is great. And it shows off that Coen Brothers nihilism and their humor. So yeah, probably Barton Fink. I do also love Big Lebowski. Leo B asks, what are my favorite movies? Barry Lyndon, Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, The Red Shoes, Paris, Texas. I was on such a roll then. I could name 4 films and now I can't. Harakiri. There we go. Sexy Monkey says, I don't know if you know this about me, but I pretty much constantly making custom sleeve artwork because, yeah, you hate the ratings ruining artwork. Me too. I mean, look, you can even see on my shelf, out of focus on this camera, so on this webcam, you can even see the logos on these, the artwork on these, and it's inconsistent because some have it, some don't. Some have it, some don't. And it's like, you don't have to do that in America. You're lucky that you don't have to put ratings on the packaging. Frank says, Fargo is the Coen Brothers masterwork, but Barton Fink, Blood Simple are great as well. Yeah, Fargo is brilliant. I've still not watched the Fargo TV anthology thing, where each season is a different story. I've heard that Fargo, I've heard the Fargo series are very good. What film has made you want to throw up because of how shit it is? Sallow? No. I'm trying to think. None. I've never had that violent a reaction of disliking a film to want to throw up. The film I probably disliked the most was when there was a recent Annie remake with Jamie Foxx that I went and saw in the cinemas because I had the cinema pass and I could see it for free. And yeah, that was a waste of time. But it didn't make me throw up. But yeah, the Annie remake from 2016, not good. Cinema-san says 1917 is an overrated movie. I said it, don't shoot me. Yeah, what were we talking about earlier that was overrated? Yeah, I can see what you mean because it's many people say it's a gimmick, the whole one-shot thing that's been done before. Um, yeah, is 1917 overrated? I don't know. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was like, oh my god, life-changing film, but it was great. Toby says just pre-ordered Jaws first edition because it's Jaws and I'm obsessed. I've not pre-ordered that, but I saw on Zavi that there's a Jaws, or there was a Jaws 4K steelbook, which went out of stock immediately. So I'm probably gonna have to pick up that on the eBay. Probably pay way too much money for that Jaws 4K steelbook. Oh yeah, and you say that's why you love Arrow Academy reversible sleeves. Yeah, at least Arrow are doing that, where you can reverse the sleeve. Yeah, so you mentioned Fear and Loathing Arrow Special Edition has the paper with the ratings logo that you can take off. That's only because they when Arrow made that box set, because it was being released in the US as well, I think, was it? Or maybe I'm wrong actually. Usually when a release is being released across multiple regions, they just print the same box and then they slap the piece of paper with the UK logos on top. Michael Mann is a great American filmmaker. Yeah, totally. I'm a huge fan of Heat. Heat is great. Thief is great. I don't think I've seen. I think they're the only two Michael Mann films I've seen. I know a lot of people say that a lot of people have a soft spot for that Miami Vice film that Michael Mann made with Colin Farrell. Has anyone seen that? Like I've heard people say Miami Vice is actually quite good, even though it's meant to look quite digital. I have heard some people say good things. What's my favorite Roman Polanski film? Maybe Rosemary's Baby or Chinatown. But I think with Chinatown, what I like most about Chinatown is the script, which obviously Polanski didn't write. Twiggy Twinkie says, "What's my opinion on endings that are left ambiguous or up to interpretation?" I feel like, well, what I will say is, ending a film seems like a very hard thing to do. So if you can leave it on an ambiguous note, that can actually be like a good get out of jail free card, because ending a film in a satisfying way for an audience it can be quite hard. So yeah, endings that are left ambiguous, it's great because if you've gone and watched the film with a few people, you can then go for a drink afterwards or go for dinner and you can still be chatting about, hey, what was that ending all about? You know, I've had so many great cinema going experiences with friends where we've gone and seen a film and the ending just like leaves us asking like, what was that about? And you can have so many great discussions. Whereas if if a film just ends and it's very clear cut, there might not be as much to talk about. What's my favorite Akio Jisagi film? I haven't seen any of them. I've got the Jisagi Buddhist trilogy box set in the back, but I just haven't cracked into it yet. Toby asks, "Do I own Fear and Desire on Masters of Cinema?" Yeah, I do. It's somewhere in the back in the Masters of Cinema collection. That was actually how I watched it. Frank says the Miami Vice movie is awful. Okay. I might not actually give that a go. Oh yeah, he made Collateral as well. Yeah. Oh yeah, Medium Cool. I need to watch that. I've got Medium Cool on the shelf. Yeah, Heat has the greatest ever shootout. that is a great shootout. Heat was obviously very inspirational for, I mean, so many modern films. But I know a lot of people say it was inspirational for The Dark Knight from Nolan, because there's that heist film early on in that. There's that heist scene early on in that film. The heist scene in Heat always reminds me of playing like Grand Theft Auto. Feels like a mission in that, which is probably really derivative and ruining ruining any comments about cinema. You know, boiling it down to a video game scene. Oh, I didn't know that Fear and Desire was quite hard to get hold of. Is it out of print? It could be out of print. What filmmaker, in my opinion, has given the greatest contribution to cinema? Probably one of the very early filmmakers then. Yeah, I don't know. If we're talking about greatest contribution to cinema, I don't know, maybe I couldn't tell you. I honestly, that's a really hard one to say. Maybe maybe Hitchcock, for how like Hitchcock kind of revolutionized what mainstream cinema would become. Because with Hitchcock's films, he said these films can be gripping, they can be thrilling and suspenseful, and also have lots of substance. And they can also, Hitchcock's films say a lot about the human condition. They leave you with a lot to think about, but they're also really entertaining and really thrilling. So maybe Hitchcock. And yeah, Martin Scorsese as well. I'm sure you could definitely say that he's had a huge influence on, cinema as a whole. Right, I think I'm gonna start winding down. So if you have any burning questions, get them in now, and I'll tackle them. And yeah, also if you've got any ideas for videos that you'd like to see from me on the channel, where obviously when I'm doing this live stream, my thoughts are very like off the top of my head. I don't really do any preparation. So if you've got any ideas for something you'd like me to go into more detail about, and like a topic you'd like me to actually properly tackle, just let me know, because I'm going to be making some videos probably tomorrow and over the next few days. So yeah, I'm going to start winding down. So yeah, if you got anything burning to say, anything burning to ask, get it in now. Yeah, Toby, you mentioned Stanley Kubrick. Yeah, obviously Kubrick has been an incredible contributor. Yeah, so I think a lot of people want me to do videos on like favorites. So maybe I should do more videos on what my personal favorites are. Yeah, so maybe I should, like Frank says, focus on the 70s. I'd love to do that. I might talk about some of my favorite 70s films. Top 10 popular films. Yeah, I might talk. What I don't do a lot on my channel is actually talk about more mainstream cinema that much. So I might do some of that. What's next up to watch? I don't know, because it's here, and because I watched one last night. I might dig more into the Criterion, David Lean, Noel Coward box set. So I might watch Blythe Spirit Might watch that tonight. But yeah, it's crazy when you've got this many films that you've not seen, and you're like, "Oh, what should I watch tonight?" It can be a pain choosing. Yeah, Medium Cool. I might watch Medium Cool actually, because I do have that on the shelf. Right, I think I'm gonna end it there. So thank you everyone. Thank you for joining me in celebrating hitting 2,000 subscribers, which is a big milestone for me. Couldn't have done it without you guys. Thanks for joining me on the chat and asking loads of questions. Yeah, it's been great fun. Thank you very much for joining. Keep an eye out for videos, because like I said, I'm going to be making some videos tomorrow, so I'll probably have a new video up. I don't know, maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. But yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Stay well and stay safe. Keep safe from the old COVID, and keep watching great films. And let me know as well. Let me know what films you're going to be watching. If you have any recommendations, just hit me up on Instagram or drop a message on YouTube on one of the videos. Just let me know what you're watching. It's always good to chat. So yeah, I'm going to end the stream. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.